Welcome, everyone. I'm Kim Brown with the Rural Institute for Inclusive Communities Transition and Employment Projects, and Teresa Baldry and I will be your moderators for today. Live captioning is available for the session. To access the captions, you'll want to open the captioning link that I've posted in both the chat box and on the slide in front of you, and you want to open that in a new browser window. And then you can size that window, shrink it down, and put it at the bottom of your screen so that you're able to see the webinar slides. You can adjust the size to whatever size is easiest for you to see. It usually is easiest to put the captions at the bottom of your screen because they scroll up. Today's webinar is sponsored by the Montana Deaf-Blind Project, which is funded in whole or in part by the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs, or OSEP, and through a contract with Children's Special Health Services at the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services. And the statements shared in the presentation today do not necessarily reflect the opinion of the sponsoring departments. All attendees are currently muted. This helps to cut down on background noise so that everyone can hear our presenter. If you want to ask the presenter a question or make a comment, please type your question or comment into the chat box. And again, if you don't see the chat or the question box, look to the upper right-hand side of your screen. You'll see an orange box with a white arrow in it. If you click on that, it will open your dashboard and you'll be able to see the chat or the questions box. For those of you who requested Montana Office of Public Instruction renewal units when you registered, those will be emailed to you after the webinar, and it can take up to a couple of weeks for us to get those sent out. Please know that you do have to have requested the OPI renewal unit credit at the time of registration in order to receive that. There is a certificate of attendance, and the link for that certificate will be sent to you in a follow-up email tomorrow. So be watching for that if you need a certificate of attendance. Today's session is being recorded for the Montana Deaf-Blind Project and Transition and Employment Project's resource libraries. By participating in the webinar, you grant permission for any chats and/or questions that you submit through the webinar platform to be recorded. And in just a little while, I'll post the links where we will house the videos. Again, we have it on 2 different websites, and so I'll post both of those links in the chat box a little bit later. It can take up to 2 weeks for us to get the video posted. The PowerPoint slides for today's presentation are already posted on both websites, and they're also available in the handouts section of your GoToWebinar dashboard if you'd like to download those. As soon as the webinar ends today, a short survey will pop up. We do ask that you please take the time to answer the 6 questions that are there. If you don't have a chance to answer the survey questions today, a link to the survey will be included in that follow-up email tomorrow. We don't expect you to answer the survey questions twice, but do please respond to at least one of those survey links. And now I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Teresa Baldry for a few words about the Montana Deaf-Blind Project.
Thank you, Kim. My name's Teresa Baldry, and I am the project coordinator at the Montana Deaf-Blind Project. What you see in front of you is an image from our website, our webpage. The Montana Deaf-Blind Project is a source of specialized information, technical assistance, and resources focused on improving education, inclusion, as well as college and career readiness for individuals with combined hearing and vision loss between the ages of birth through 21. The Montana Deaf-Blind Project is located at the Rural Institute for Inclusive Communities at the University of Montana. We have 3 staff, all whom work part-time and equal almost 1 full-time. There's lots of ways to contact us, as you can see by the screen in front of you. Please feel free to reach out to our Facebook group, learn more about all of our project initiatives and areas of focus, phone number, email, lots of ways to connect with us. The term deaf-blind can be misleading. It implies the complete absence of vision and hearing. In reality, only about 6% of the children who are deaf-blind are without any sight or hearing. While most individuals have some usable vision and or hearing, no children with deaf-blindness are alike. The loss of vision and hearing, even minor losses, can greatly impact development and learning. Children who are deafblind must be taught using strategies that are responsive to their individual sensory, cognitive, and physical skills. One of the services we offer are trainings such as today, and I'll pass it back to Kim Brown. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Teresa. And with that, I would like to go ahead and introduce our speaker. We are delighted to have back with us today Kim Norris-Grano. Kim is a self-proclaimed everythingologist, but her role as a mother is a driving force in most endeavors. Her oldest daughter and greatest teacher, Alana, age 19, was born with a rare chromosome difference. Kim's love for Alana took her into the role of advocate, and sharing her life experiences with others is a way of both paying it back and paying it forward to other families of children with disabilities. Before leaving the traditional workforce to raise her 3 children, Sal, age 10, Serena, 7, and Cecilia, 6, Kim taught special education in 4th and 5th grades. Kim and Alana have built a hobby business together, and their weekdays are filled with baking dog treats, tending barnyard critters, sheep, ducks, chickens, dogs, and cats, and planning their next adventure. And before I turn it over to Kim, I would like to launch just a quick poll to find out who we have in the audience today. So if you would please just take a minute to respond to the poll. The question is, in what capacity do you support individuals with a significant impact of disability? And you can select more than one, select any that apply. Your options here are as a parent or other close family member, as an educator, such as a paraeducator, a general education teacher, or a special education teacher, as a behavior specialist or therapist, such as occupational therapist, physical therapist, or speech therapist, or I don't have a connection but want to learn more, or other. And if you've chosen other, please, if you don't mind, share with us in the chat box what other refers to. And we'll just give a few more seconds for you to answer the poll.
This is Teresa. One of those others is an independent living specialist. Another is taking a class to become certified in ASL. Another, a family support specialist, I'm assuming with the DD program here in Montana. And then we have an Illinois State Deafblind Project staff here. Yay!
All right.
Deafblind staff in Iowa and with the Helen Keller National Center.
Great. Thank you, Teresa. And with that, I will go ahead and close the poll. We have about, we'll give one more minute because we still have a few votes coming in. We're at 73%, I'm sorry.
This is Teresa. I'll share a little more then. We have a service provider and we have blind and low vision staff in Great Falls.
Excellent.
From vocational rehabilitation. We also have the South Dakota service to the blind and visually impaired joining us today.
Great. Thank you all for joining us. I will go ahead and close the poll and share it so that Kim, our presenter, can see the results. Are you able to see those results, Kim?
Yes, that's wonderful. It looks like we've got a wide variety of folks here today. And so I hope that I can make this webinar generalized so that it can impact everyone, yet specific enough that it actually means something to everyone. So I just want to thank everyone so much for being here today. This is truly a passion of mine, and I just love sharing our family's story, because I think that in the world of significant impacts of disabilities, we need hope. And especially in this time of COVID, things have been incredibly challenging for us. And we've built a great program for Alana. So I just want to be just a voice and a vision of hope. And I hope that you enjoy today's presentation. So with that, I'll just kind of jump in. Designing meaningful work experiences. That's what we do with Alana. And I just want to say it's not about work experiences. It's really about designing meaningful life experiences. Since this presentation is focused on the vocational realm, we will talk a lot about that, but really in the end, it's about quality of life for individuals with a significant impact of disability. So I just really want to make that clear, that it's not about work, it's about life and love and joy and purpose and relationships. And so if you take a look at these pictures, you can see Alana's cute little smile there, that's what she's doing here. The bottom left there, she's filling Kong toys at the Yellowstone Valley Animal Shelter. Before COVID, we were very regular volunteers. We'll get back to that, I know we will. And then the next picture over, you'll see Alana's dropping off some dog treats for drive-through bank customers. We live in a small town, about 2,000 people, and Alana blesses every customer that comes through with a pup. She blesses them with a dog treat, and I just hear from everyone in the community how much their dogs love those treats. So it's a fun thing that we do. Next slide over, here we are. Alana's got a box in her hands and a big grin on her face. We're delivering a donation of training treats, which are smaller dog treats, to the Montana Women's Prison for their Prison Paws program, where they take in dogs from the community. Usually they're, you know, maybe about 6 months to maybe 2 years old. They're in that adolescent stage, and the inmate trainers, they work with the dogs for 4 months, and then they do like a display of skills for their owners, and then they do also offer like boarding services after the dogs have been through that program. So it's a really neat program that we really feel blessed to be a part of. Again, COVID has kind of shut that down too, because they don't have dogs coming in from the community anymore. But again, that will kick off. And then the last picture here is Alana, and she's shelving children's DVDs at the Billings Public Library. And again, that little smile on her face, it really says it all. Okay, Kim, next slide, please. So I did do a webinar back in November. I'm not sure how many of you were able to attend that one. If you weren't able to, and this current webinar really speaks to you, I just encourage you to go back, and even if you just look at the PowerPoint slides, my intent with the PowerPoint slides is that they are an absolute resource for people after the fact. Because let's face it, we forget things. And so if you have this downloaded on your computer, or print it out and put it in your students' special education file who has a significant impact of disability, maybe that can jog some memories and start some new visions for you. So if you can, go back and look at that November webinar, because in that webinar, we really focused on how to identify interests and how to identify activities that can go along with those interests. And so in this webinar, we're going to take it to the next step, where we take those developed interests and we turn them into actual work experiences, like out in the community or volunteer settings, whatnot. So in the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see a picture of Alana. She graduated in 2019 from Hysham High School in rural eastern Montana, and she's there with her brother. Alana, she loved throwing the cap at graduation, but she did not like having it on her head. So her brother's wearing the cap in that picture and holding her diploma. But anyway, Alana, she graduated in a class of 3, and that's not 3 students with special needs. That's 3 students, period. So we definitely live in a rural place, but I do want to point out that before we moved to the Hysham-Forsyth area, we were in Billings, Montana, and we lived there for about 10 years. Alana lived there for about 10 years with me. And so whether you're rural or whether you're urban, probably for some of you that are in bigger cities, 100,000 people in Billings probably doesn't seem urban, but for Montana it is. I just hope that you can see some things in this presentation that make it clear that this is not specialized to small communities. This is all communities. It really is. And so Alana, she lives at home with us, with her family. And we have a small hobby farm, and you can see there she is with her bottle lamb, Clarabelle, who is now a giant. So it's cute to see that from last spring. And so about 5 years ago, in kind of a season of frustration, I really decided that her team needed a better focus for where her life was going. And so I decided on a life goal. And as corny as it sounds, it's been really, really important to Alana, really important for me, really important for all the agencies that we work with, because now we all have a common goal. And that goal is to live an engaged life full of joy and purpose that is rich in personal relationships. And so everything that we do with Alana has to fit under that. If it doesn't fit under that, we don't do it. And so anyway, 5 years ago, I didn't exactly know where this was going, but I knew it was going somewhere. And so we decided to launch a Facebook page, and it's called Alana, a Jill of all trades. And because I knew she has a short attention span, she has a wide variety of interests. And so I just thought, well, this leaves the floodgates open. She can be a Jill of all trades, and she definitely has become that for sure. So we talked in the last webinar about preferred tasks. You can also call those passions, interests, whatever is important to the individual, something that they may do in their spare time, in their unstructured spare time, whether you want them to or not. I talked in the last webinar about how Alana enjoys pouring and dumping and egg cracking. And sometimes that didn't always seem like it was like a gift, because we'd get up in the morning and she would have out a mixing bowl, and she'd have dumped in all sorts of things like breakfast cereal, and she'd crack in a few eggs, and then she'd top it off with some dry oatmeal and maybe even a dollop of sour cream. But we saw how that engaged her. And so we took those interests of pouring and dumping and egg cracking and opening and closing cabinet doors, and we found tasks that were more productive than making a mess. And then that's what we did to develop her vocational interests. Is we took those skills and we had her make dog treats and horse treats and cat treats, and anyway, all sorts of things. So if we can hit the next slide. So the goals for today's webinar, I just really hope everyone gets these 8 points at least. So with a defined life goal and an assortment of preferred tasks, that we can start to identify and pull in the champions, the cheerleaders, the believers, and then that group needs to dream and mobilize a bright future for that youth in transition. And then also hold some space for the skeptics. So first things, have that life goal, have your team, be prepared for skeptics, and start blazing on. The next goal is to discover how the foundations of opportunity for individuals with a significant impact of disability, those opportunities I found, they really lie in relationships, presence, and the positive attitudes of the service, the support professionals that are with her. Another goal for today's webinar would be to clarify the must-haves and the can't-stands as you take preferred tasks into the community. Also to understand how to grow new opportunity while also ensuring long-term projects remain sustainable. To value being intentional in the delivery of services or goods, to understand what your product is aside from the obvious. Learn how to build a network of supporters, that's business partners, repeat customers, fans, Also to recognize funding sources, support services, agencies that that can be a resource as you develop meaningful work experiences. And then of course, the last goal is to believe in a bright future for youth in transition, especially those with a significant impact of disability. And that just felt like a whole bunch of words, so I'm really excited to get into the meat of it. I like this slide that says the future is not something that we fall into, it's something we create. If you can just take it back one moment, Kim. So in Montana, I think for those of you that aren't Montanans, it's important to understand that currently we don't have a transition program for our youth with significant impacts of disability after age 18. At 18 years old, school funding stops and students typically graduate. So some districts, they will, out of their general funds, provide transition services for students from 18 to 21. But those districts, quite honestly, are few and far between. And so a lot of people reference this analogy of falling off the cliff at graduation. And so that's why I chose that picture to go with that quote. And I just want to say that that does not have to be if we create something different. Okay, next slide, please. So I already talked about what Alana's life goal was, to live that engaged life, joy and purpose, those personal relationships. So when it came time to take those refined interests that have been turned into tasks, I thought, okay, who's gonna rally behind me? Who's gonna help me dream and hope? Who's gonna lift me up when I stumble? Who's gonna celebrate my successes, big and small? Who's gonna celebrate that with us? Who's gonna help us along the way? And so these are the folks that we invited in. And it was often informal. And these are the folks that we wanted to pull close as Alana neared graduation. And these people, they understand the importance of Alana's preferred tasks. And they got her and they got me. And I just want to say that the champions, the cheerleaders, the believers, they spread far beyond the traditional IEP members. I have a little tickle in my throat, sorry there. I think that you really need to take a look at the cheerleaders of the cheerleaders. That would be like my best friend, Christy, right here, with the googly eyes, and Alana. You know, she is a cheerleader for Alana, but she's also a cheerleader for me too. And, you know, as that traditional IEP team dissolves, these cheerleaders of the cheerleaders, they're going to play an even bigger role. There's a picture of Alana's brother in the spring of 2013 with a little sign there, "Go Athletes Go," at Special Olympics track and field event. There's my husband, Sal. I think kind of call him more of a rock than a cheerleader. Cheerleader doesn't really fit him, but he gives us that stability and that foundation to do all the things that we do. He makes sure that we have propane in the propane tank so we can actually bake dog treats. And he does, you know, things like provides childcare for our other 3 children when Alana and I are off running around doing whatever. He makes deliveries for us. He just does all kinds of things behind the scenes. And then Alana's great grandmother, she's also been a cheerleader for us both. Next slide, please. So I wanted to talk for a moment about the Advocacy Relay. So when you talk about torchbearers, cheerleaders, whatever you want to call it, over the course of Alana's life, I've seen where that primary torchbearer has kind of changed. And so you'll see that first slide, or that first part of the sequence there in the comic strip. There's this octopus that's not looking like he's doing so great. And then in comes the yak, and the yak grabs that torch and is ready to take off with it. I just wanted to say that, you know, I've always loved and cared for Alana deeply, but sometimes I've needed to pass that torch to a therapist or a teacher or an in-home caregiver, because let's face it, we all need a yak to have our back sometimes. And, you know, that's okay. So when you look at the team for the individual with a significant impact of disability, be sure to take a look at past torchbearers, because they may have some value in being a part of the team as you look to transition. You know, I can remember talking about sharing the torch. When they first told me that Alana was going to start school at age 3, I was like, yeah, right. No, she's not going to school full time when she's 3 years old. Are you kidding me? But when the time actually came, I was so thrilled to load her on that school bus, and I waved goodbye to her, and I did not shed a tear. And it's not because I didn't care, but it's because I needed someone else to help. And so just know that sometimes if your parents aren't carrying that torch, they can pick it up again, and they will pick it up again. So let's see here. I think it's kind of interesting when you talk about torchbearers as being kind of like the champions for individuals with a significant impact of disability. I think it's kind of neat to tie in the correlation of the Special Olympics. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Special Olympics, but the torch is called the Flame of Hope. And there's a picture there of Alana and her 2 siblings, and we are at a rest stop outside of Hysham because our sheriff's department, they were doing a leg of the torch run. And that torch run, they run this torch, they run it, bike it, walk it, 2,200 miles in a relay all across the state of Montana. And you can see a map at the bottom there, everywhere they go. And it's primarily all law enforcement that do this. It's a huge fundraiser for Special Olympics. It generates a lot of public awareness. And I just think it's so ironic because the Flame of Hope, really, to be carrying the torch, you have to have hope. And so when you look at that octopus, I think that octopus may have lost a little bit of that hope. Anyway, next slide, please. Okay, so you have your team together, but then there's those skeptics. And there are some perceived barriers, okay? You're starting to dream all these neat dreams of going out into the community and maybe doing some recycling projects or some community garden projects, or you know, maybe a pet sitting jobs, or maybe dog walking. And then there's someone on the team that looks like the alligator in the bottom right corner saying, well, what about transportation? What about liability? What about a lack of funding? Are we creating unsustainable precedents? But what about our staffing shortages at the school? What about safety concerns? What about scheduling conflicts? And you know, what about displays of inappropriate behaviors? Is this student with a significant impact of disability, are they really ready to go out into a community setting? And what about the needs of all students? We can't just place all of our resources into this one student. And those are very real concerns that when we wanted to take Alana's refined interests, now vocational activities into the community, we did have some of these concerns. And then you may have some folks in the bottom left corner there, that alligator is saying, well, why fix what isn't broken? You know, we had a situation where we had gotten a donation of little 6-pound dog food bags from the animal shelter. And we had printed out these really adorable little labels that had, you know, Fido and Felix's food bank, and had our phone number on there. And we were really excited to start up a little pet food bank in our community, because the animal shelter that we volunteer at in Billings, they have a pet food pantry, and it's fantastic for them. And the community uses it all the time. And we wanted to start up something similar, especially because we had access to these extra bags of dog food that the shelter had. So I went to the individual who does the food bank here and said, hey, I've got these bags of dog food. Can we just set them up so that when folks come through, you know, the first Monday of the month, they can also grab a bag of dog food too. And I was met with a little bit of resistance, and the individual said, well, no. But I knew this was a need because I had been told that people were getting extra food at the food bank to feed their pets. But sometimes new things are difficult for some folks, and that's okay. You just have to press on and find those folks that are going to rally behind you and believe in what you're doing. And, you know, so maybe we just have to do this in a different way. Maybe I call some connections at the Billings Gazette and see, hey, do you have any of those old newspaper holders that, you know, you put in the couple quarters and you get your paper out? Do you have any of those just sitting around in storage? You know, because we could paint one of those up and we could put the pet food bank, the food right in there. And so you just have to take the skeptics with a grain of salt. Don't let them get you down, and just keep pressing on. We welcome that growth mindset in students, you know, that our situation isn't fixed. You know, we can grow, we can change. If you don't know something, it's not that you can't do it, it's just that you don't know how to do it yet. So these challenges, I see this as just something that we haven't figured out quite yet. And I will make the point that sometimes, as much as you try, individuals aren't going to understand. And that's okay. Actually, I think I come to that in another slide. So can you switch slides, Kim? Okay, real quick here. So some thoughts to consider if you have family members that seem to be reluctant in transition planning for their student with a significant impact of disability. I think these are some important things to consider. You know, throughout Alana's life, you know, I've heard folks say, you know, oh, I wish everyone cared as much as you. I wish everyone was as involved as you, you know. But really, the one that kind of gets me the most is, you know, I have students, or I have kids, and their families, they just don't care. And I think that it's easy to think that. But the reality from my experiences, and everything that I'm saying today is my experiences 100%. You can take what you want and leave the rest. But in my experiences, I've never met a family that didn't care. I've met families that were frustrated, were down and out, were hopeless, on hard times, but I'd never met a family that didn't care. And so I saw this graphic, and it's this anger iceberg. And I think that really you could take angry and replace that with apathy or apathetic, because sometimes I think when we see individuals and they seem like they're apathetic, really it's something else underneath that. Maybe they're anxious, maybe they're frustrated, you know, maybe they're worried, maybe, you know, they have some guilt or whatever it is. But apathy isn't typically the primary issue. It's usually something that's deeper. And I think for students in transition, whoever is going to be their main source of support after graduation, school staff, you know, vocational rehabilitation, all those folks that are playing a role, they really need to have an understanding of where those individuals are at. And the only way that teachers or other professionals are going to understand where that family is at is to establish a non-judgmental relationship with them, because that really is going to open up the doors to candid conversations. And, you know, perhaps you can address some of the issues that the family has so that they can get to the point where they can have that creative mind to come up with neat ideas for their child with a significant impact of disability. But, you know, as you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I'm sorry for those of you who spelling errors drive you a little nutty. I know hierarchy is spelled wrong. It should be IE, but I just love the graphic, but the spelling was wrong, but I couldn't change the spelling. So it is what it is. But anyway, if you look at the bottom here, you know, you need food, water, sleep, all of these things, of course. Then you need security and safety. You know, you need employment, you need your health, and you need to feel like you have resources. And I think that with COVID, that security, that safety, those needs, they've really been pulled out from a lot of folks. I can't even imagine trying a transition plan with Alana, because let's face it, it's hard to see what next month is going to look like, let alone, you know, 2 years from now. But anyway, the next thing, you know, that families need, individuals need, is they need you know, friendship and intimacy, you know, relationships that really matter. And then the next thing up, then you have confidence, respect of others, you have self-esteem. If you don't have self-esteem, it's going to be difficult to approach the bank president and say, hey, what do you think about our dog treats in your drive-through banking? If you don't have self-esteem, if you don't have confidence, that's going to be a huge struggle for you. And so when I look at this hierarchy of needs, our families, they really need to have a lot of wonderful things in place before they're really in a position where they can dream and hope for their child at the time of graduation. Because at the very top, that's where you see creativity, spontaneity, these sorts of things. And that's what you need to really be brainstorming that bright future. And next slide, please, Kim. So, embracing obstacles. So success, what it looks like to other people, what it really looks like. I think many of us have probably seen this graphic before, and it's absolutely true. Parenting Alana, it's had its ups, it's had its downs, but I've recognized a pattern, and I thought that this was important to share. And that's that when I hit a point where there's a lot of frustration or sadness, anger, despair, whatever it is, those quote negative emotions, I just want to say that really, for me, there are no negative emotions. As long as you keep those emotions in check, I found that those emotions are really catalysts for positive change. And so sometimes when I have found myself in the lowest of valleys with Alana, where I felt like no one understood what our family was going through and what Alana needed, when I was in those lowest valleys, that's what really pushed me to get to the next level. And so I've always kind of found that after those low periods, things do get better. And that's why I said in the beginning that we launched Alana, a Jill of all trades, and we came up with her life goal after we were really in a frustrating point. So here are some other things, some other insights that I've learned along the way. Sometimes even well-meaning folks will make comments that sting. Just stand your ground and show a little grace. You can do both. You can show grace and stand your ground. People, they oftentimes don't mean what they say. And that's just the truth in my experience. Also, for some individuals, seeing is believing, so they may join the team later. And I would just leave that door open. And then sometimes, despite an advocate's greatest efforts, some people really never fully understand the scope of support an individual with a significant impact of disability requires, or why that effort is even worth it. Quite honestly, educating hearts and minds, it takes time, and it's a lot of emotional energy, and that emotional energy, it's valuable, and it's worth conserving. And so I found sometimes when I've met resistance in pursuing Alana's life goal, it's best just to press on. But that doesn't mean that you've given up. You can let a team member go, but that doesn't mean right, that you have given up. For us, we changed school districts for Alana. And that's not an option that everyone has. We were very fortunate to have that option, but you know, in the time of transition, Alana was a freshman in high school. We didn't feel like we had tons of time to educate these hearts and minds. She needed to get moving on what her life was going to look like after high school. And as much as I tried to share my vision, it wasn't seen. And so Alana started going to Hysham, and that was a much better fit for her. And so, not that you have to change school districts to get a team to support you, but you need to do what's best for you. And if you're a parent or the loved one of a individual with a significant impact of disability, you have to do what's right for them, and what's right is going to look different to everyone. And I know it sounds nice, but I've also realized that it's really not possible for someone else to walk a mile in my shoes. They just can't. They're not going to understand. They're not. But those people who choose to walk beside us, we found that they're a true treasure. Okay, next slide, please. So you've got the team, you have the list of talents, strengths, and interests. They've been developed into vocational tasks. Now, how do we find opportunity for our youth in transition outside of the classroom? So the first thing I would say absolutely is to enlist in the power of relationships. Relationships for us more than anything have led to opportunity. And if you look at that bottom left-hand slide where it shows connection and those ripples, I mean, that's just how it is. You drop a pebble and those ripples, they just go out and out and out. I mean, people know someone who knows someone who knows someone who knows someone. And it has amazed me time and time and time again, how many things can happen just because of one relationship. The other thing is, this other quote, the more complex the network is, the more complex its pattern of interconnections, the more resilient it will be. And I think that resiliency is something that in the time of COVID, we have really learned to appreciate, you know, because let's face it, our world has been so turned upside down that, you know, we don't know what's happening tomorrow, but those connections that we have, they're going to be there no matter what. If Facebook decides that it's going to shut down, it declares bankruptcy, it's gone forever, our connections, they extend far beyond Facebook. So here's an example of how just one relationship impacted the success of Alana's dog treats and the fulfillment of her life goal. So 2006, this is what, 15 years ago? 15 years ago, this started. Moved back to Montana. I'm a Montanan, but I was in the Air Force. And so Alana was born in Delaware. And we moved back in 2015 and 2006, or not 2015, we moved back in 2005. 2006 was really getting settled in, started taking her to story time at the library. She was about 5 years old. And we connected with the children's librarians there at the library. And we just showed our face, you know, week after week we were there, and they got to know Alana. And so we started making our dog treats. And we were thinking, we need to branch out a little bit. Who could we donate these treats to? And so I had remembered seeing, you know, from our time at the library that they have these read dogs. And these read dogs are dogs that they bring in, like therapy companion sorts of dogs. And they just lay there while kids read books to them. It's like a non-judgmental way for kids to work on their reading. And it's fun for the kids, fun for the dogs. So anyway, I asked, well, could we bring in some treats for your read dogs? And they said, oh, sure. Well, you know, we're actually having our puppy party this weekend. And so the puppy party was kind of fun. They had all the read dogs there all at the same time. They had some puppy dog crafts and puppy dog stories. And so we went and we brought some treats and we shared the treats with the read dogs. And so when we were there, Oliver, one of the read dogs, his handler, she turned out to be the executive director of Dog Tag Buddies. And Dog Tag Buddies is an organization that supports veterans with PTSD or traumatic brain injury, some of those like more invisible type injuries, and they support them with service dogs at no charge. So anyway, I was excited about connecting with Dog Tag Buddies and providing some training treats for their program. So we connected with them, started doing, you know, the treats on a pretty regular basis. And then there was an 8th grade student at Alana's actual former middle school, Lewis and Clark. And she is a part of the Two Roads Project, where her social studies teacher gave her $100, gave her and like 9 other classmates $100. And it's a service-based learning. And he said, go do something for your community. And at first, you know, the students are like, oh my goodness, what do I do with this? But then, you know, they start to get their focus and they get their team just like Alana did. And then they, you know, putting together that vision just like Alana did. So anyway, so the individual, the 8th grade student, she had decided that she wanted to take her $100 and support, she couldn't decide, veterans or dogs. Visiting with the family friend, they said, well, why don't you try Dog Tag Buddies? Because they do both. And so she got in touch with Dog Tag Buddies and said, you know, what can I do to help your organization? And the executive director said, well, you know, we really need some reliable backpacks for our vets to carry their dog supplies, you know, like a bowl for their water and, you know, the leash, the treats, the whatever, balls, whatever sorts of supplies that the dog was going to need when they were out and about. And so this 8th grade student, she started sewing bandanas with her aunt and her grandmother. And they started selling these bandanas at a pet store in Billings. And all the doggy bandanas that were sold went towards purchasing rucksacks from Red Ox. And Red Ox is a bag company here in Billings, and they're indestructible. These bags are absolutely indestructible. So anyway, she's doing that. And then she wants to fill it with treats. And so that's one of the things. And so she contacts a couple different local dog treat people, and she doesn't hear back from them. And so then she goes and she says, you know, I'm not having any luck. And the executive director of Dog Tag Buddies says, well, what about Kim and Alana? And so they gave her our name. And she reached out to us and we said, yes, absolutely, this sounds like a fantastic idea. And so we got involved with her and this project of hers. And then, okay, I know this is a lot of words, but I think it's cool, even though it's so specific to Alana, it's just such a clear demonstration of how you never know where things are going to go. So the next thing that happens is that there's this documentary filmmaker, and he's doing a documentary about veteran suicide. And unfortunately, Montana has one of the highest levels of suicide, one of the highest levels of veteran suicide specifically. And so he finds out about Dog Tag Buddies. And so he wants to do part of his docuseries. He wants to do a documentary on Dog Tag Buddies. Well, then he hears about this project that this 8th grader is doing, and how fantastic is that? And then he hears about, well, how Alana and her dog treats are connected, and how fantastic is that? Because it's just showing how you start with one organization, Dog Tag Buddies, but then what's behind that, and what's behind that, and what's behind that, and what's the story that really leads to the prevention of veteran suicide is it's everyone doing their tiny little part. And so anyway, last summer, I got a call from this individual. He's living in Kansas City. He just, unfortunately, the Chiefs lost, so I'm sure he's a little bummed about that, but he does the cinematography for the Kansas City Chiefs, all the sideline shots, that's him. But anyway, he came up to Montana several times. He spent 3 full days with us to film our story. And I just saw that as such a fantastic, opportunity for us to show others, not just, talking about veteran suicide, but also talking about individuals with a significant impact of disability and how they can play a role in the prevention of veteran suicide too, because what they do and what they contribute matters too. Alana has an amazing spirit about her, and it's a non-judgmental spirit. And that is one of her greatest gifts. And I think that that is why she connects to individuals, even though she doesn't speak, she uses sign. That's why she connects with individuals like the inmate trainers at the Montana Women's Prison, or a veteran that's struggling with PTSD, is because they know that she's not going to judge them. And when she gives them a high five or she gives them a hug, it's from her heart. And we need that human connection. So anyway, another thing that happened because of that relationship, going all the way back to just that librarian in Billings, last summer we were recognized at Dog Tag Buddies in a ceremony, and it was pretty great. It was a big to do. Then Representative Gianforte, now Governor Gianforte, was there. Steve Daines was there, and they're recognizing Alana and both this 8th grade student for their contributions. And Alana was able to sign the Pledge of Allegiance and sign for the ceremony as well. And then that relationship is still continuing. Come Christmas time, Alana made some dog treats to fill stockings for the veterans with the 8th grade student again. And people were touched by what we did. It was on Facebook. And so we have gotten customers out of that event at Dog Tag Buddies. And that's just what happens, is that someone will just hear about us and they'll click on our page and they're hooked. Not everyone, and we're glad not everyone, but that's how we get these random customers. I don't even know who they are. I mean, we have an individual in Bozeman and she orders from us all the time. I have no idea who she is, really. But anyway, it's just those connections, those networks that just ripple and ripple. Okay, next slide, please. So more examples of how relationships can lead to opportunity. So let's see here. I'm trying to think about how I can make this like succinct, but anyway, we've been volunteering with the animal shelter for years and years and years. Actually since 2017. And so they recently had a raffle for Valentine's Day. And it was a basket of all kinds of fun prizes. And one of the things was dog treats from Alana. So if you see down there, Yeltsin Valley Animal Shelter, I circled, you know, they tagged Alana a Jill of all trades because homemade dog treats. And if you look, this post, it can reach over 15,000 people. And again, connections leading to other connections. Do we want 15,000 people ordering dog treats from us? No. But somewhere, someone's going to see this post and it's going to speak to them, and they become a loyal customer, and it's pretty awesome. Another example of how relationships lead to opportunity. The animal shelter, I really believe it was because of our very first event that we held for them back in May of 2017. A brewery that donates spent grains to us to make dog treats. Spent grains, it's kind of like the waste product of making beer. And a lot of times farmers just feed it to their animals or whatever, but the brewery would give us buckets of these spent grains, and we'd use them in dog treats. Okay, well, I found out that this brewery was having an event for the animal shelter. And I thought, well, wow, we make dog treats and you're doing an event for the animal shelter. And so why don't we set up a little table of dog treats and raise some money for the animal shelter too? So we set up our little table, and, you know, we met the then executive director, and we met the then volunteer coordinator, and, you know, we gave them our 80 bucks that we had raised. And then when it came time the following spring for us to fill out an application to volunteer at the shelter, they remembered us. They remembered our faces, they remembered the dog treats. And I really think that that gave us an in that we may not have already had, because we didn't have a direct connection to the animal shelter. We didn't have someone that could really vouch for us. And so sometimes when we go into situations where we don't have someone who's vouching for us, you go back to those skeptics. What about liability? What about, you know, setting an, you know, an unsustainable precedent? You know, is this really the kind of volunteer base we want? I'm not saying that the animal shelter thought that at all, but the reality is that there are prejudices out there. And I have found that, you know, being in the public, doing things like this, letting our face be seen, it can help to dismantle some of those prejudices and give us more opportunity. Okay, next slide, please. Another thing about how these virtual connections go, we donated a tub of dog treats to the sheriff's office because in Forsyth, we don't have a dedicated shelter. And so when stray dogs are picked up, they go to the sheriff's office and they have a little kennel there and you know, dog food, whatever. And they hang out there until the owners come and pick them up, or one of the vet clinics will house them if need be. And so anyway, so we dropped off some dog treats to the sheriff's office for those dogs that are waiting for their owners to come. And they put a post of it on Facebook. And again, you can see where you've got 9,417 potential viewers of this. So when an organization like the Rosebud County Sheriff's Office, when they post something like this, it gives us credibility, which is really fantastic. But it goes far beyond credibility. It goes far beyond dog treat sales. It really goes to those relationships. And last month, I was driving Alana and her 6-year-old sister, Cecilia, and we had a very serious car accident. You can see there. Unfortunately, we were not injured, just little bumps and bruises, little scrapes. But Cecilia, my 6-year-old, she was crying pretty unconsolably, and she did have a little bit of a bloody nose. And Alana was crying unconsolably too. But I really had my hands full with Cecilia. Cecilia, I don't know if she was in shock or what the deal was, but her whole body was shaking. Not good. I mean, you can look at the car. It was a bad wreck, like really bad. So of course, everyone was shooken up. So anyway, what happened was the first responders came, and one of them was Sheriff Fulton, whose face you can see it's kind of blurred behind the lid of Alana's dog treats, but it was Sheriff Fulton. And he's the same one who was doing the torch run where we were waiting at the rest stop in Hysham there with our signs, cheering them on. But anyway, so Sheriff Fulton was there. So I was comforting Cece, I had her wrapped up in a blanket, and Alana was still crying. Alana needed a lot of attention too that I wasn't able to give her. I was trying to split myself, but it wasn't working really well for either one of them. But the sheriff, he engaged Alana, and he said to her, "Hey, Alana, are you still making your dog treats? Are you still making your dog treats?" And she goes, "Ah," which is her way of saying yes. And finally, her crying stopped. And then he asked her, "You still doing your Special Olympics?" And she was able to engage with him. And so he was able to comfort her in a time that she really needed it. And it was because of the relationships that we had built using dog treats. Because it's not about dog treats, it's about relationships. And so anyway, I just think that's a pretty spectacular example of how it just goes so much beyond. And the sheriff was also able to, you know, kind of recognize a little bit if she was having any sort of, you know, consciousness issues or whatever, if she had, you know, had a head injury or anything, by asking her, you know, questions about her dog treats. Next slide, please.
This is Teresa. Just wanted you to know, Kim, we don't have any questions and about 25 minutes left.
Okay, great. Okay, the next thing, and Teresa, what slide number is this?
Sorry, I can't see the slide numbers. I think you've got about 20 left.
Oh, okay. Next one. Okay, so being present leads to opportunity. So just show up, things will happen, honestly. The doors will be open to those who are bold enough to knock. 80% of success is just showing up. That's absolutely true. Okay, next slide, please. So here are some places where we found opportunity. Just scrolling through Facebook, listening to the radio, flipping through newspapers, checking flyers on community boards, thumbing through different newsletters, reading school bulletins, driving by business marquee signs. Everywhere there are opportunities, honestly. So we just jump in where we can. If there's a farmer's market in Miles City, we'll set up a table. If there's a silent auction, you can see the bottom right hand there. If there's a silent auction for someone in our community battling cancer, or whatever the needs are, we'll provide a silent basket, a silent auction basket. The opportunities are really quite endless if you just put yourself out there. Next slide, please. These are other ways that we found to be involved in our community just by embracing the opportunities that we see. We saw they were having a festival of trees. And so we decided, okay, let's put together a little tree that has dog treats on it. And so that's that bottom left one. It's only a little 2-foot tall tinsel tree, but it's adorable. And again, it got our name out there and what we're doing out there. Stockman Bank in Hysham, they had a scarecrow auction. And it was a bit of a stretch, but we put together this Spot the Skeleton Scarecrow. And so it's a skeleton of dog bones with a little scarecrow hat. And we auctioned it off, and they made a nice chunk of change for a community project. And then other ways that we just kind of put ourselves out there is we surprised our county elections office this past election day with some fun custom dog treats that were stamped with "My Human Voted Ballot Buddy," and they were just tickled pink to get those. Next slide, please. The other thing that I found that's really important is to ensure the positive attitude of people working with Alana out in the community. Because really the positive attitude, it causes a chain reaction, and positive thoughts lead to positive events, positive outcomes. It just sparks a catalyst of extraordinary results. It really does. I've realized that when we're out in the community, my attitude really matters. I'm teaching others how to interact with Alana by how I interact with her. So when I'm in the community, I kind of put on the hat of an ambassador of inclusion. And so if I enjoy Alana's company, then others enjoy Alana's company too. If I'm annoyed with her behaviors, then others are annoyed with her behaviors too. So I do my best not to apologize for Alana being Alana. I also refrain from correcting her in front of others. It's so easy for me to be like, no, stop, don't do that. But when I have a positive relationship with Alana, it just leads to more opportunities for us both. And so there's a picture of us there at the library. And when we're at the library, she's free to express the joy she feels. When she's shelving DVDs, she's got her happy squeals going on. And others really delight in her happiness as well, because I'm delighting in her happiness. And we kind of own our position as volunteers by wearing our Libraries Are For Everyone t-shirts, and then also our name badges. And I just want to say too that our contributions to the library, they're not measured in productivity, but they're no less valuable to the library's mission. Next slide, please. So these are some more ways we've opened opportunity by being mindful of our positive energy. When we go into a volunteer setting, we greet staff by their names, or Alana sometimes will have a name sign for them. That makes them feel especially connected. We'll smile at others, introduce ourselves to new staff, or give compliments, meaningful compliments. We verbally express our delight in being part of the team. Really, those small things they're really big things. People enjoy being around people that are fun to be around. Okay, next slide, please. So if you've ever tried eHarmony, then you're probably familiar with the relationship must-haves and can't-stands list. We sort of put that together when we were looking at taking Alana's interests and work activities into the community. Some of the must-haves, we needed flexible attendance, rigid schedules weren't going to work. Social connections, she needed to be able to do high fives and hugs. It wasn't going to work if she couldn't interact in meaningful ways. And the high fives and the hugs, those are meaningful ways for her to communicate. She needed to be able to freely communicate. So she can't be constricted to vocalize in a soft volume. She's got to have some freedom to wiggle and walk and waltz and whatever. She does not do well in just a stationary workplace. We also really need to have that sense of belonging. It does not work for us to feel like a stranger when we go into a setting. So I think that when we're looking at the must-haves, can't stands, we are really just appreciating her authenticity. We're just setting the stage for her to be able to be her. And sometimes I will say that a work experience, if it's not a good fit, sometimes it just needs a little tweaking. So like Alana, she struggled with hanging out at farmers markets. So we added a few carnival style games, and that attracted traffic. She was able to hand out stickers, and that gave her like a nonverbal way of communicating with, or not communicating, interacting with others. That was really positive for her. And it also allowed her to wiggle, you know, a little bit. Next slide, please. So back to opportunity for a moment. You know, balancing Alana's meaningful work experiences with the rest of our life, it can be tricky, and that balance doesn't always look the same. But when I have too much going on, when I start to lose that balance, it always feels the same. I feel very overwhelmed and it's not fun anymore. And so I've really found that taking on new projects is better if we can do them with a definite end date. Just a one-time thing, because then we can fulfill our commitments to long-term projects. We can keep things fresh with those short-term projects, but not burn out. Also, like setting boundaries of time and energy on new projects, that's really important because it also kind of allows us a trial run. So sometimes tasks in a community setting, they may not match well, and that's okay. So we're always learning from our experiences. We started off doing some baking with the seniors at our senior center, baking some dog treats. And at first, I just wanted it to be a one-time thing, but the director there was so excited about it that she wanted to put us on the schedule for every I think it was like the third Wednesday of the month. And so I got caught up in her excitement. And the next thing I knew, we had a standing time slot on the calendar. Well, that situation was not good for Alana or I, because the seniors needed more support in making the dog treats than I was able to give, because I needed to attend Alana. So I couldn't split myself between Alana and the seniors. And so it wasn't a good situation. So again, now we just know we start small one time. And then if it's a bomb, we don't do it again, or we change something. If it's a success, we can do it again if we want. Next slide, please. To focus our vocational activities, we needed to be intentional about what our products were, why they were unique, how they impacted our customers. What we found was we wanted our products to be like a cherry on the top. They're one of a kind, they're really unique. So that uniqueness generates customers, but the cherry on top nature, it gives us a little bit of flexibility as far as like order fill time, because it's not something that they need to have right now most times. So our eggs that we have, the thing that we like about them, they're consumable, they're inexpensive. So we can have repeat customers of all socioeconomic groups. Another thing that makes our eggs really unique is that we have a rainbow of colors. We have browns, whites, greens, blues, speckled eggs, you name it. Our eggs are laid by truly free-range hens that are ethically produced, and the hens have names, and so that really speaks to some people. The dog treats that we do, they're fun, they have a variety of shapes and sizes. Again, they're consumable, they're inexpensive. We have a basket of them at farmers markets for 25 cents for a piece, so little kids can come up and get a dog treat. Another thing that's special about them is they don't have any preservatives. They are baked in a kitchen, not a lab. And then we can stamp them with all sorts of different things, makes them customizable. So that really makes us, you know, able to do treats like for birthdays or any special occasion we can do. And we found that when we personalize an order and we deliver it to the customer, they feel like they've gotten a gift. And at first, I just wanted to provide, you know, a nice product because they were paying money for it. But then I realized, wow, these people really feel like they're getting a gift, and they were thanking us. You know, I mean, they were buying the product, but they were thanking us for it. And so then I realized, oh, okay, this is part of it. And when they feel like they're getting a gift, they feel special, then we feel appreciated. And it builds a relationship, and that relationship is what Alana just delights in. Next slide, please. Another important consideration for us was what to do with our excess products. So like before we started our feeder insect colonies, we made sure that our own critters could gobble them up. So, you know, we have one local customer that buys some mealworms from us, but we can also give them to our chickens, our ducks, even our betta fish. Because you don't want to work so hard on something and then just have your product go to waste. And then we've also found, as I've mentioned before, donating dog treats. It's an easy way for us to build relationships and avoid waste. Next slide, please. So connection, I've been talking a lot about that, but connection's why we're here. It gives us purpose and meaning in our lives. So we designed Alana's meaningful work experiences. We built the network of support, and we started small with a team committed to Alana. Then we used those existing relationships. We built new connections. We made ourselves visible to the community by participating in a variety of events and activities. We were aware of the positive energy we contributed. We make sure that the environments and the activities are both well matched for Alana's talents, strengths, and interests. We also, again, are mindful of that balance in taking on new opportunity. And then, it's important to truly understand what our products are and their impact on our customers and their connection to Alana's life goal. Next slide, please. So back in November, we talked about Waldo, and Waldo is someone else besides Alana. Now we can talk about Waldo. And Waldo is this fictional student, and in our last webinar, we discovered that he enjoys the sense of vibration. And so we brainstormed a bunch of activities that Waldo could do using vibration. And so I kind of want to update you on Waldo's happenings. So Waldo's team discovered that he had an interest in fish tanks. So he really loves the gentle pulses of air and water pumps in the fish tanks. And so as the team was looking at taking his interests and putting them into vocational tasks, this fish tank theme really caught on. And so he started with his committed team, he started building on his experiences and his successes. Next slide, please. So first, Waldo started out maintaining the school library's fish tank. And there it was discovered that he also enjoyed operating the valve to siphon the water out. And so when you squeeze that valve on that siphon, it gives a sensory experience kind of like a stress ball. And so anyway, the school librarian saw that Waldo was so committed to these fish tanks and impressed with this. And she mentioned that her grandfather had a fish tank at his assisted living facility that could really benefit from Waldo's TLC. And so with that positive reference, Waldo started caring for this tank. Next slide, please. So while he was at the long-term care facility, he realized that for a variety of reasons, some residents can't freely enjoy the fish tank in the common area. So Waldo's team, they brainstormed the idea of bedside betas. And so Waldo's team saw they had a sale, like a surplus sale of school items. So they picked up this old computer cart that was sturdy, very functional, that would work great for bedside betas. And next slide, please. Then Waldo's next door neighbor stumbled upon a functioning 3-gallon fish tank and heater and water filter at a church rummage sale. Then Waldo and his team, they sought out a local fish rescue group for both networking and to adopt a beta. And this really does exist, this fish rescue in Billings. It really does. And then the gravel, the tank, the decorations, all of this, it was donated after the assisted living facility wrote up a little article in their news flyer about Waldo's bedside betas in their newsletter. Next slide, please. So as Waldo entered his senior year of high school, his team started to research what a fish tank maintenance business could look like. So Waldo started small with offering fish sitting, maintaining tanks and caring for fish on a case-by-case basis as customers, primarily friends and family, took weekend getaways. This allowed Waldo flexibility as he took on new responsibilities. He also advertised his services in the assisted living facility's news flyers, as many of the residents' families read the newsletter. And then Waldo's team, they also started following a couple Facebook pages that had a focus on tank cleaning, small scale, so that they could get some ideas about what the future might hold for Waldo. So I really did find this, come clean my fish tank. It had like 149 likes. So a small fish tank cleaning service. I think it's something that our students with a significant impact of disability, if it fit their strengths and interests, I absolutely think this is possible. I mean, when I was in high school, I had a friend on the cross country team. He had his own fish tank cleaning business at 15 years old. He maintained the fish tanks at doctors' offices around Billings, right here in Billings. Next slide, please. So some thoughts on funding sources, support services, agencies that can assist an individual with a significant impact of disability. You know, I would just say the biggest thing is start small. You don't need a lot of resources when you're starting small. You know, we just started out with tiny little on your honor vending boxes that we placed around town with just 6 little baggies of treats in each box. We tried some plants. We borrowed a grow light. We reused plastic seedling pots. And thank goodness we didn't invest a whole bunch in this, because garden starts, they were not Alana's thing at all. They're just too fragile for her. When we started making our pet treats, we used a mixing bowl. We didn't get the fancy smancy KitchenAid stand mixer. We first started with just a bowl and a spoon, then we upgraded to a Ninja mixer. Now we have a nice 6-quart KitchenAid mixer. Next slide, please. Ask about funds earmarked for special education, explore programs like voc rehab, Medicaid waivers. But I would say utilize those resources with intention. Sometimes there's resources out there, but they don't fit what you're doing. And I think sometimes the wait lists are so long and you feel so lucky when you get a slot. But if it's not going to work for the individual and for their life goal, it's okay not to utilize that resource. That's what I've found. But some things that worked well for us is that the PREETS funding, that is pre-employment transition services funding through voc rehab, they were able to purchase a KitchenAid mixer at the school, gave mileage reimbursement to the aide. Let's see, they did work with us a little bit on maybe starting a business plan, but we decided to just stick with the hobby business, making less than $600 a year. We utilize Alana's cost plan through her Medicaid waiver. And I think because these are all like typed out so thoroughly, and because they're so specific to Alana, I think we can just skip to the next slide and just say that resources exist. Navigating these resources, it was definitely not the easiest for us, but in the end, we're really fortunate and lucky to have these resources, and thankful that we did put the effort into getting them in place. But it's going to be so individual. Another thing is just share your vision with others. We're so surprised how many folks stepped in, wanted to help. People help in big and small ways. They save egg cartons for us. They save old peanut butter jars for us so that we can fill them with dog treats. Like I said, those breweries, they donate grains to us. Christmas gifts. Alana got a dog treat waffle iron from her aunt and uncle for Christmas and her cousins. I mean, it's amazing. I didn't even know that waffle iron dog treat thing existed, but there it is. and it's Alana's. So just share your vision with others because other people get excited. Next slide, please. So more example of support from others. Alana's grandfather, we call him Opa, made a Plinko board for her, and the dog beanbag toss that we use as the carnival style games. Now, what if Waldo's team was looking for some similar carnival style games, but they didn't have any woodworkers in their family? I would say look to things like the VOAG class or the shop class. Look to the art class. Maybe there's a 4-H student that's doing a woodworking project, and maybe they'd be happy to come up with this little fishing hole punch game for Waldo. Next slide, please. It doesn't have to be perfect to be awesome. That's something that I want to share. You know, I thought I had to have everything figured out right when Alana graduated, but I don't. I mean, I didn't know what I was really going to do with my life when I graduated at 18, and I still don't know exactly what I'm doing, and that's how it is for Alana. I mean, we just roll with life, and it doesn't have to be perfect to be awesome. You know, even when we couldn't donate treats to the prison pause for COVID reasons, they still sent us a card in the mail, and you can see here, we're thinking about you. Happy Halloween, Alana and Kim. We miss seeing you. Hope you're staying healthy. And so special relationships, even when we can't donate treats. Next slide. One last pivotal point. We shortened Alana's school week. It was important for her to understand that there were going to be days when she was not going to go to school with her dad and her 3 younger siblings. Her dad's also the music teacher. So intentionally, we shortened Alana's school week to just Monday through Wednesday. It's a 4-day school week just because it's a smaller community, but we took Thursday off. So she had 9 months of Thursdays to understand that there were going to be days where she didn't go to school. She was going to go to work with mom. And so then when fall hit, she was able to stand on the porch and wave goodbye to her siblings and her dad as they went off to school. Because quite honestly, school had been such a huge part of her life for so long that if we didn't have this transitionary period, I'm not sure how she would have handled not just all of a sudden not going to school with dad and siblings. And so with that, it is exactly 1:30. I'm sorry, there's no time for questions. That's what I have. Thank you so much.
Kim, it's Teresa. There aren't questions. You just had people listening. So,
Okay.
and folks, we did have a couple folks that said they'll be looking for the slides when we have them up. I'll
Okay, great. Great.
And just so, this is Kim, the other Kim, and just so everyone knows, the slides are posted on the websites already, and I've put the website addresses in the chat box. The video, it usually takes a couple of weeks for us to get that up. Kim, I just wanted to ask you, I did pull over your contact slide from your previous presentation. Do you want me to put that up on the screen, or would you rather I not?
Oh, no, that would be great. Sure.
Okay. All right, so there's the contact information for Kim. And just a few final comments for everyone. Please remember that when you close out of the webinar, that short survey will appear. We do ask you to take the time to fill it out. If you don't have time today, please fill it out when you receive our follow-up email tomorrow. We have a 3-webinar series coming up that we're very excited to announce. It will be Introduction to Deaf-blindness. And Susan Bashinsky is the presenter. The first webinar will be March 24th, the second, April 7th, and the third, April 21st. All of those will run from 1 until 2:30 Mountain Time. And we hope to have the flyer and registration information out for that series in the next week or so. So do be watching for that. I'd like to thank all of our audience members today, our captioning professional. Thank you, Teresa, for co-moderating. And thank you so much, Kim, for coming again to share your story, Alana's story, and fabulous fun slides. Everyone have a great afternoon. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.